Okay, um, so this webinar is going to be on using color and swatches in Flexi 19. The title's quite vague, but we'll specify a bit further in the agenda. So this is the introduction, just a few minutes, and then we'll have 30 to 35 minutes of webinar content. And then we will have a Q&A segment at the end where you'll have the ability to answer questions in the chat, and we can answer them here and now, so you can get an immediate answer. If you have questions during the webinar, my colleague Aniko will be monitoring the chat and will note down your questions, but we probably won't pause to address them unless it's to show something again or if it's particularly relevant. But if you do have questions, feel free to type them or save them to the end as you wish, and we'll address those for you. So this webinar is going to focus on the swatch tables, swatch palettes, some useful tips and tricks and guides to help it be more understandable for the user, how you can use swatch tables and make colors in different color spaces, how to save them for future projects, how to use the same colors that a user was using beforehand, and then also creating some printable swatches from the swatch tables in your software. So yeah, I guess we'll begin. Okay, so this is just the default layout for Flexi. We're going to be focusing firstly on the swatch palettes that you have here. So this is our default swatch palette. You have some very simple colors in RGB color space, your cut contours, some basic patterns and gradients. So first of all, we're going to look at the layout. As with any window in Flexi, you can drag this onto other toolbars like so, or my preference when I'm working with a swatch table for a particular file is to actually drag it down into the Flexi interface here, so that when I'm designing, it's very easy for me to click or just to drag the swatches onto particular objects like so. Again, you can expand this swatch table as you wish, so that you can have as many colors as you want visible at the same time. You can also use a number of options here to change how your swatch table is presented. So at the moment it's presented as a list, but we also have this option here called palette view. And if I click on this, it's going to put my colors into a handy little palette. And if I want to see the name of the color, I can just hover over it like so. Once we have our swatch table open, we can right click on our swatch table to adjust different settings on it. So we can show only solid colors. We can show only gradients, or we can show everything. We can sort them in different ways, for example by color name, or by RGB value, or by media vendor if we're using different libraries, but we're just going to leave it on name for now. We can also choose to hide specific colors. So we can right click on one color and go to view and select to hide the color, show all except this color. So it gives us a lot of options. Yeah, if we want to, let me clarify that. So if I go to view and I say hide this color, any objects created with that color in my document will not be visible. So if I show it again, they will be visible. This is useful, for example, if I have a big file and I want to see every part created with a certain color. I can use, for example, hide all except this color. So if I make some more objects and I make them different colors, like so. But I only want to view my magenta. I can right click on magenta and show hide all except this color, and only my magenta swatches will be visible. And then you can just select show all colors to see everything. So that's a nice handy little tool you can use if you want to work with specific colors without seeing the rest of the objects in the file. All right, so the next thing we're going to look at is how to create new swatch tables and what we can do with them. So if I right click on my swatch table here, I can select new table, and it opens up a plain swatch table down in the bottom here. You can then drag specific swatches onto that table, like so. And when you're creating new swatches, you can create them onto that table. So this is a very handy way of working with specific colors for your document. So you can just drag the colors that you're working with from Design Central onto your swatch table. And then you have a nice little separate swatch table for your working document. And this we can use to then create further modifications to our file. So it's a good way to separate the colors you're working with for one specific document. Again, you can right click and you can select to save this swatch table. So if you're working on a specific project with specific colors, you can right click, you can select save table as. You can save it in a specific location. So let's call it project 1 table. You select save. And then we can close this swatch table. And if we want to open it again, we can just go to view, color, and open table. Then we can come back to the location of our swatch table, open it back up, and we can continue working on the project. So saving and opening swatch tables is a very handy way of keeping your colors organized for specific projects. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is creating new colors in Flexi. As some of you may know, Flexi can work in multiple color spaces at the same time. So you can often end up working with a wide range of different colors. So how can we create a new color, a new swatch in Flexi? In the fill stroke editor, we have this option advanced. So for a solid fill or for a gradient fill, for example, we'll use solid because it's easier to demonstrate. You can select advanced, and it's going to open up this color specs window. Here, you can easily create a new color just by selecting the new button here. It's going to duplicate the color, but then we can change the name like this. And then we can select here the color mode. At the moment, it's on RGB, but as we were saying earlier, Flexi can make colors in CMYK, can make colors in LAB, can make colors in HSV. So it's very easy for you to use this to change your color. So for example, we might want a bit less black, we might want a bit more yellow, and we might want a tad more magenta just to get a nice deep orange color. And then when I select OK, my color is now here and it is saved. Again, if we want to make a new color, we can select new. We can work in LAB. It's going to do a loose conversion. And then here we can use our LAB values to make ourselves a new swatch. We can call it fiery orange LAB, for example. And when we select OK, we have our new orange swatch here as well. So this is a good demonstration of using different color spaces and creating different colors in the same document. Again, you can also create spot colors here. So if we want to make our own cut contour, we can first of all choose the color. So we might want a nice deep purple, and we can change it to spot, and then we can name the cut contour as we want. So we can call it cut contour, and then something like a drag, if we want to specify that it's for a drag knife. So again, you can work with, well, a lot of different color spaces, a lot of different color methods. You can define your own colors in RGB, in CMYK, in LAB, and also spot colors as well. On the subject of spot colors, we can also open libraries from vendors such as Pantone and other manufacturers. And we'll show you how to do that now. So if I want to work with Pantone colors in the software, Flexi has access to all of the Pantone libraries. So we can right click again on our table, select Open Table, and if we come back to the Production Suite and Swatch folder, in the Libraries folder, we have here color swatch libraries from a lot of media vendors, but also from Pantone. So if I want to work with the Pantone solid coated library, for example, I can just come to SAI, Production Suite, Swatch, Library, Pantone, and here I can open my Pantone swatches. Here we are. So this is the entire Pantone solid coated library listed like so. This makes it very easy to work with the Pantone colors in your document, and because they are all spot colors, they work with the software's global color mapping. So you can use these for designing to export for other users, or you can use them with our software with the global color mapping, because we have all of these colors noted in our global color mapping to ensure your color consistency. We also have libraries that you can import from other vendors. You can have a look through yourself, there's a lot of them. But for example, with Mimaki, they have some spot color libraries, just the one in this case, you can import. For Roland, we have a lot of libraries that they use in VersaWorks, so like the metallic colors and the orange colors. So if you're using a function like Send to VersaWorks, you can use those spot colors in our software. Okay, so for our next example, we're going to look at how we can work with the colors that are already in a user's document. So if my customer sends me a design, like so, and they want me to continue working with exactly the same colors, how can I get these colors into a very handy swatch table so I can continue to work with them and make sure that I get exactly the same colors for my customer at the end? First of all, we're going to open up a new swatch table for our new document. Here we are. Then we're going to right click on it and we're going to select Merge from Document. And it's going to bring out all of the colors that are in our design. Again, if you don't want to show a color, you can just delete it from the swatch table like so, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. But for example, if they want us to continue working with the same colors they were using beforehand to continue to design their sign. Not sure what happened with my screen there. Sorry, I think my HDMI cable became unplugged. Okay, so we'll demonstrate that again because we need to. So new table, drag it out, right click, merge from document, and every color in our vector file will show here. And we can use them, as we were saying, to continue with the design of our file. So if they want, for example, an additional sign with the yellow background, and they want it to have an outline that uses their turquoise color, and then they want us to use some text and they want the text to also be in the same black that they used in their previous sign. There we are. You can see it's very easy to continue to use the same colors. And now, as we showed beforehand, if we want to save this into a project, we can right click, save table as, and then we can save it as Best Beer project as an example. Again, you don't have to save it to the swatch table folder. You can save it anywhere on your computer. So if we want to keep it in the same folder as our file, that's perfectly possible to do so. And then we can see in the type what kind of name we have for the folder. So we'll just show another example. If we import another vector EPS file, and this only works with vectors, to clarify. If we import another vector EPS file, we can right click on our swatch toolbar, create a new table, we can drag it out, right click, merge from documents, and here we have our two colors. Again, in the advanced tab, if we want to change the name, so like royal blue, for example, we can do that, and then it will update in our swatch table. So if we want to rename number 1 to like pretty pink, we can do so. It will rename also in our swatch table, and then as we demonstrated earlier, you can continue to use the same colors for designing in your file. It's a very handy way to ensure you're producing the same result that your customer wants. And merge from document is a great tool for making sure. And again, now we can just right click, save table as, and then we can save it as B project, for example. Okay. So for our next example, let's say our customers submitted a file to us and they want us to print out examples of how the colors will look for their confirmation before we actually proceed with printing the file. So let's say they have a big banner with a number of Pantone colors in, and they want us to demonstrate that we can hit the Pantone values close enough for their needs. So again, we're going to just open back up the library for Pantone solid coated. Swatch library Pantone solid coated. So now we have all of our Pantone colors here. Let's see how we can create the swatches for my customer. So in the view menu, we have this option called create swatch, and we're going to use our current palette. In Design Central, it's going to list for us our different palettes. So it has Project 1, which was the palette that we made at the top here. Spot Color, which was the single color from the Mimaki library that we loaded. And also Pantone Solid Coated, which, as you can see, is quite a considerable palette. And we don't want all of those colors. So what we're going to do is go to the Advanced Settings. And here we can choose individually which swatches we want to print. So I'm going to clear all. So all of the swatches are now hidden. And I'm going to select a few of the swatches that my customer wants to use. So they want Pantone Red. They want Pantone Blue. They want Pantone Yellow Sea. They might want a couple more. So let's say this one and this one, and let's get something a bit different. This one. In the label tab, we can choose to change the font that will print next to our swatch. But let's say we're happy with this, so you can see what it will look like. We press OK, and it's going to only produce swatches for the colors that I chose. So now here I can clarify some final settings. So this is the number of items per row. So let's say we want a smaller organized swatch palette like so, maybe even like this. At the moment, the vertical spacing is set to 2 centimeters, but the swatches are only 1.5 centimeters big. Now I want my customer to have a good view of these swatches, so I'm going to change it to 5 centimeters. And then I'm going to adjust my vertical spacing like so. So there's enough room between my swatches. And I'm also going to adjust the horizontal spacing, and you'll see why in a second. And when I'm happy, I can press apply, and it's going to create my swatches right here. So these are actually, if we use our select within tool, these are actually created with the spot color or the exact swatch color that I selected. We'll show that again. Okay, so in the case of Pantones, if we're creating a demonstration swatch for my customer, it will keep them as spot colors, so your RIP software will be able to map them correctly. And it has handily the names of the colors here as well. Now these swatches are all organized. I can just send them to print. Now, as you can imagine, if you want to print out a whole swatch library for the Pantone colors, it's going to be pretty large, but it is entirely possible. There's not a limitation on the amount of colors that you can merge into a swatch table. So if you fancy printing the entire Pantone solid coated library as 5 centimeter swatches, that's how fast and easy it is to create some printable swatches. So in the case of my customer from the beer manufacturer, I can open up his table as well, best beer. I can go to create swatch, current palette. I can choose the best beer project, and we can make him some nice swatches so he understands the kind of colors that he expects from their project. Okay, so there are just 1 or 2 more things that we can check, and then we'll have some Q&A time, so get your questions ready for us. So alongside printing the printable swatches, you can also measure them with a spectrometer in our software. So under the Edit and the Color Settings menu, if you come to the display settings, you can set here the rendering intent, but also the display settings for your printer and for your monitor. So if you want to get a preview with a specific ICC profile for a printer, we can use the soft proofing to get an estimation of how our colors are going to look when they are printed. So here I have my Roland TrueViz VG added, and I've selected my ICC profile. Here you can choose to change your input profile, which we will do because these have a higher gamut. And also your rendering intent. So let's put everything on perceptual. When you're happy that your printer profile is correct and your input profiles and rendering intents match what you're going to send, well, let me go back to that one here. Okay, you can come to the top of the screen here and you can use this option called soft proof. And I don't know if you saw, but it uses the information that we input in the color settings to make an estimation of how my colors will actually print on my printer. Okay, so let's have a look at this swatch in particular. This is how it will look on my monitor. And then if I select the soft proof button, we can see there's a slight shift in the color, which is a very handy tool as it gives us some estimation of what our color might look like before we print it. Now, it's not perfect, but it does apply the monitor ICC and the printer ICC to your color, so you have a much better judgment of how it's going to look. Okay. So we have also the option that I mentioned earlier for measuring the color of your swatches using a spectrometer. So you can have some idea of how close your colors are hitting to the value they're supposed to be. As with anything, the color conversion is not always perfect because there are a lot of factors that can affect the actual color that you output. So if we go to edit and then to preferences, tools, and we select meter here, this is so we can attach a spectrometer such as an I1 and use it to measure the actual printed value of our colors. So let's say we have an X-Rite I1 and it's connected to our PC via USB. We can set this up here. And so when we go to view color specs, you can use the measure option. It won't work because I don't have an I1 connected. We can use the measure option to read the LAB value of our swatch. So if you're interested in knowing how close your Pantones are printing to the actual expected value, you can measure the LAB value from the color specs window here. So that's one last little tip for everybody. Okay, and that pretty much covers the content that we wanted to look at for the webinar. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask or anything you would like us to go over, feel free to type them now and then we'll take a look with you. Meanwhile, while you're having a think about questions, I'll get back up my presentation, and there's some information here that might be helpful for everyone. Is it possible to generate colors from CMYK and not just CMY? Sure. So if we come back to the advanced tab here, if you use CMYK, you can change the K value like so. And you can use the full CMYK color gamut to create your colors, if this is what you mean. With the generate tool, which generate tool did you mean, sorry? For the generating the swatch palettes? How so do you mean, sorry? Is there a particular library you want to use? Let me see. If your library is CMYK, it will generate them in CMYK. Similarly, if it's RGB, it will generate them in RGB, and lab and spot is the same. So it uses the actual color of the swatch in the table. So whichever color space you're generating in, it will use that to make the swatch palette. And then you can send this off to print, and it will be CMYK. This one, this is a kind of a full range of CMYK in increments of, I think 5% or 10%, if this is what you mean. So you can see this under View, Create Swatch, CMYK. This can be a good test for the gamut of the printer if this is what you're referring to. Are we planning a webinar on the production manager? If you come to thinksci.com/en/eu/events, this will be, you can see it on our website. I'll show you where to find this. But we have a full list of the webinars that we have hosted, we have planned to host from Europe. We plan a webinar on the production manager as a whole. I don't think so. Normally we focus on specific tools, but what might interest you is later on in the year we're going to be sending out a poll to users asking what kind of webinars they would like to see, and if an overview of the production manager would be useful, then I would suggest to recommend that. So if we come to the support tab on thinksci.com, so we'll do this from the main page, thinksci.com. If you come to the support on the right hand side, at the bottom we have this section on training and events. If you sort the region by Europe, it will list all of the webinars that we are hosting. Online webinar, different workshops in different regions. So you can use this to see when and where we'll be hosting trainings and also the subject of them. So our next webinar in Europe will be not on the list. Hang on, let me just change this quickly. Okay, so our next webinar will be on vectorizing in Flexi, and this will be in April. Can we show a gradient from CMYK to CMYK? Yes. So, like we showed for creating a regular color, if you select a gradient fill, like so, and then you come to advanced, you can choose your color here. So here we have RGB, CMYK, single spot color, and double spot color. So for CMYK, we can select here, then we come to the top swatch, we click on it, and we can change this to something like magenta. We select our bottom swatch, we can change this to something like yellow, and then we can choose our type of gradient here, select OK. And then we can adjust it like so to create the kind of gradient we want on our object. Again, you can change it here so it's a linear gradient. I'm not exactly sure what this is. Conical gradient. Or yeah, a spherical gradient. So there's a lot of freedom and options in how you generate your gradients as well. And again, similarly to any other color, if we want to use it in the future, we can drag it to our swatch library here. And then next time we want to work with it, we can use the same gradient and then still edit it like so. I hope that answers your question. Okay, so for tutorials, thinksai.com, and then you just go to support and then training and events. If you're interested in our YouTube channel for further guides, it's youtube.com/thesai channel, or if you type SA International, it should come up as well. And we have a number of guides on our YouTube channel, but we also upload our webinars here as well. So here we can go through our list of videos. As you can see, we have quite a lot of shorter guides, a few minutes, but we also upload all of our webinars as well, and also the webinars from the USA. So if there's a topic covered in the USA webinars that you would like to see, they will also be available here for you. Okay, so are there any further questions before we wrap up? No? Okay, in that case, thank you very much everyone for attending, and I apologize for the small technical issues at the start. We'll look into that again and see if we can work it out. Thanks for your time, and again, if you have any further questions, let us know, and we'll clip down the webinar and send it out to everyone who attended as well. So thank you very much for your time, and have a good afternoon.